Okay, so hi, I'm Ellie, and I'm here today to refute Amanda's claim that animal experimentation is the most effective and efficient approach in scientific research. Her supporting claims are, first, since animals have close anatomical similarities to humans, that they make great test subjects. Second, animal research has been heavily regulated to protect animals from any type of abuse or harm. And lastly, her last claim is animal experimentation can be used to find new cures and save the lives of thousands of people that suffer from illnesses. So let's go to her first argument, that animals make great test subjects. This isn't false. Animals do make great test subjects, but so do humans. Her overall claim is arguing that animals are the most efficient resource. Therefore, her first supporting claim is stating that animals make the best test subject, which is false. Animals do not make the best test subjects, and here's why. Her claim is supported by the evidence that we share 95% of our genes with a mouse, which makes it an effective model for the human body. This is true, however, an inadequate piece of evidence to generalize her claim that animals, therefore, are the most effective. We share 50% of our genes with a banana, but we also don't test on bananas. Simply sharing genes with the mouse does not mean that it's the most effective model. Paul Furlong, a professor of clinical neuroimaging at Ashton University, states that the anatomical differences between animals and people make animals poor models for human beings. It's very hard to create an animal model that even equates closely to what we're trying to achieve as a human. So the most effective subject doesn't just mean that the subject itself is appropriate, but the cost, time, resources, legal fees, how we acquire the subject, all have to be taken into account. Up to now, there's no generalized or published cost for all test subjects being done on animals. Therefore, this is a claim that can't be proven completely with facts or statistics. Her evidence is simply an opinion based on selective information. The Humane Society International compared a variety of test animals to their in vitro counterparts. So in vitro is just like in a tube, so it's just like a test tube without any animals involved. These studies showed that the tests done on animals cost way more than 3 times what it costs to do on a non-animal test subject. Therefore, testing on animals strictly clinically, so this is like without like trying to acquire them or paying for their food or their stay, makes it less efficient. So if I'm true in proving that they're not the most efficient due to her claims of genes as well as financially, then she did not prove that they were the best test subjects, and that undermines her main proposition. Let's go to her second point, that animal research has been heavily regulated to protect animals from possible harm. So the evidence that she uses to support this claim is that the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee has to approve proposals for animal research, and then also that the AWA regulates animal experiments. The 2 pieces of evidence she uses were true, but left out the fact that the first committee is only for federally funded projects, which leaves out thousands of other companies free to do testing unregulated. And also the AWA only accounts for 5% of animal experimenting done. So 95% of the animals, according to PETA, are not regulated. So let's go back to her claim that it's heavily regulated. So using the term heavily regulated followed with her 2 specific companies that only protect a small portion of testing animals is a claim that rests on the back of inadequate evidence. In fact, in the 2009 Humane Society study of the U.S. released a report that over 400 violations were reported to the AWA. In one lab in Louisiana, primates were suffering severe psychological stress. They were, quote, tearing gaping wounds into their arms and legs. Up north, the UC Davis Center for Neuroscience, according to the Sacramento Bee, 3 baby mice were found sealed alive in plastic bags and left unattended. So, unregulated animals is not just abuse, but according to the Humane Society, this type of unregulation means insufficient data, unethical means of testing, and also a high chance of miscalculation, resulting in products being deemed safe when they're not. So her supporting claim that animal research is heavily regulated is false, therefore not actually supporting her main point that animals make the best and most efficient test subject. Now her last supporting claim is that animal experimentation can be used to find many cures and solve many diseases and help save lives. The evidence that she uses to support her claim are quotes from either an animal research lab or a pro list for animal research. Clear to say, the evidence she's using is not from an unbiased medical professional, but from organizations that only gain from animal experimentation. Her evidence, however, is that animal research has led to medical breakthroughs, which is not incorrect data, however irrelevant to her overarching claim that it's the most efficient. The following are just a couple examples of drugs that proved to work with animals but didn't work on humans. The 1950 sleeping pill Thalidomide caused over 10,000 babies to be born with severe deformities. The drug Vivolide protected the heart of mice, however went on to cause more than 27,000 heart attacks. The National Institute of Health admits that an astounding 95% of drugs that test safe and effective in animals fail in human clinical trials. So that's not to say that her claim that it does help people isn't true, but it's just not the most effective. According to the American Journal of Managed Care, which is a UK scholarly article, the in vitro, so the in-glass testing, is actually more relevant and it's obviously safer. These examples are just a few that are intended to do just as what her claim stated, find new cures and save the lives of many. The claim is true for some instances, but is also extremely false in others. This claim does not, however, support the overarching premise that it's the most effective. It's not the most effective because there are more drugs that go through animal testing that failed versus those who went through in vitro testing and passed. Therefore, her claim is not fully supported with any factual evidence. The overarching claim that animal testing is the most efficient in research is supported by overgeneralized supporting points. This information and supporting points are true in cases, but I've proved to you that the claim of efficiency is simply false. The evidence she used was inadequate to prove the claim. There are more efficient, less costly, less time-consuming, more humane, and more efficient forms of scientific research. Thanks.
All right, all the structural stuff is fine. I think the big issue concerns the definition of efficiency. That's the key point that we're going to be talking about. And you at least identify what your standard of efficiency is concerning how much money it saved or how reliable the results are. I think those are pretty good standards. The advocate, I'm sure, would probably have a different standard of efficiency because there are arguments to be made concerning, the benefits of the research that you have to do on live animals and all that kind of stuff. But I think you've got a good sense of what the arguments are on these particular points, and that's fine. On the first point, I mean, it sounds like a little bit like an echo of the earlier speech that we had, where there's a discussion of what the genetic characteristics of mice are. The banana comparison is okay, except I think they might actually do some tests on bananas, so you might want to worry about that one. There are weird stuff, electrics and bruising and all that kind of crap. They test on all kinds of things, So I think there might be a response to that somebody could make at some point. I'm not sure that that's the best, but I like the hyperbole of the argument. It's kind of fun to present it that way. The idea that humans would be the most effective, I think that that's true, and I think probably the argument is maybe phrased a little bit problematically, and that's kind of the weakness that you keep exploiting, is that they have suggested efficiency, and they don't really have a clear criteria for that. And if we're talking about what's efficient, gets us the best results or the most consistent results, human research does that sort of thing. I can see that, except of course that there are costs to doing the human research, and the costs of animal research are a little bit different. The stuff about the regulations, that's okay. The reason that 95% are not regulated, I'd be a little hesitant about quoting PETA, by the way, but the reason that 95% are not relevant is because 95% of them are mice, and they're not covered by the AWA rules. And so, but the reason that they're mice is because of the turnover and the generations, and we're looking for long-term impacts and that sort of thing, and genetic relationships, and those are harder to find in species that live longer, including humans. So it would take a while to get there. So there are answers to some of these points, but I thought you did a good job presenting them. That there were a bunch of violations of AWA rules. I think I was a little disturbed by the mice in the plastic bag. On the other hand, they're mice. Sorry. If they're in my house, I'd be hitting them with a brick, not putting them in a plastic bag. But I understand. People, it's animals. I do think that you have one thing that I thought is a problem, and that is the kind of general challenge to the research that the advocate presents, because they cite organizations that are in favor of animal testing, that's biased. Well, my goodness, you cite evidence that comes from people who are against animal testing, so that's biased. The idea that somebody has a point of view that makes them biased, that's a problem. That's not what bias is. Now, for example, if the bias resulted from, like, these are people that are making money off of doing, selling animals, then I would say maybe that's the deal that you're dealing with. But if it's scientific researchers who believe that they're getting results, I'm not exactly sure that that's the reason that they are biased. You want to be a little bit careful about that. I thought you had a pretty good summary talking about the efficiency thing also, and that's the key issue. All right, thank you. I gotta stop.